Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome another episode of Heavy Metallurgists Album Club. And yep, we didn't pop on and say anything yesterday, but rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne, and condolences to his family and friends. Obviously, none of them are watching this, but still, pretty heavy couple days here, and we're going to be having a show dedicated to Ozzy on Friday, so tune into that. But yeah, kind of clouds an otherwise decent week. Been a complete for us Gen Xers for sure. I don't know about these other young bucks, but it's been
I think they still feel it, man.
yeah, you gotta feel it. You gotta feel it. It's the birth of heavy metal. Definitely one of the pioneers and innovators. But Logan, how you doing, man?
Basically, as you said, I mean, this, kind of took over the whole week. I was definitely like listening to and having a different week. Then all of a sudden, Tuesday at around 2 o'clock Central happened, and found out Ozzy passed, and that was just basically it. And there's definitely a generational take, I'm sure. Like for me, it impacts me as well, but probably differently. Because when I got into Ozzy, it was more he was already like a you know a media figure and more of a celebrity.
Yeah.
He was like my first exposure to him was through like video games and TV commercials and movie cameos and stuff. So entirely different, but definitely still impactful. Like it feels, like a god is gone. Like literally, I mean, something that you would perceive as untouchable, even though we all knew that's not the case. I mean, guys had Parkinson's for 6 years now, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't seem like it would be this soon after the show. And yeah, I can't believe how it all kind of worked out. And
Almost poetic.
it really was. I'm sure if you're able to talk to him, it would be, not that that's what he wanted, but I mean, who knows, really? When someone like that's confronted with their own passing. So, yeah, I mean, as far as spinning, I was listening to a bunch of stuff up until Tuesday midday, and then since then it's just been, Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne. So that's basically it. It's taken over. So
right on.
Yep, we'll leave it at that.
How about you, Jim?
Very similar to Logan. Yeah, listening to just a variety of things, but it's definitely been nothing but Ozzy since. And yeah, it's like Logan. I was at work, and my brother just sent like a 2-word text, and he was just like, "Ozzy died," and it was like a bunch of shit was going on at the same time. It was like somebody was calling me at work, and my I work from home. My wife was coming in the door and asking me. It was like all this crazy. So I was completely discombobulated, man. And I was just like, and I felt this like wave of emotion, but I was just like, okay, I got to compartmentalize this for a second. You know what I mean? But as soon as I get done with my day, I'm gonna let it come. You know what I mean? And sure enough, like as soon as I get off at 6, as soon as 6 o'clock ran around, I just immediately got in a horrible mood. and I actually ended up getting into like a disagreement with my wife. And so I ended up leaving and going to my brother's house.
Oh no.
And because I mean it's my fault. I was in a bad mood, and obviously, and I inadvertent, I did not mean to, but my tone, I kind of took it out on her, the way I was feeling about it all. And but I went, which I've apologized for. But in the meantime, I went to my brother's house, and we just blasted Ozzy for hours. And so, yeah, obviously shown on these before, but whatever. It's of course Diary, and Bark of the Moon and Ultimate Sin. These are all my favorites. The only one I don't like, I really love as much as these, is that I wish I had on vinyl, is No Rest, but I can't find No Rest for the Wicked. This is even before this last month. I mean, I can't find it anywhere for less than $100. But
dude, even Ultimate Sin, I've been looking for No Rest for the Wicked too, and it's just they they're crazy what they want for
Yeah.
that shit. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, even crappy condition is really expensive. But besides the wonderful revisit to Ozzy, and I gotta say, like, Bark at the Moon's been my favorite for a while. But man, I mean, I heard Bark at the Moon first, but the first tape I ever bought was Ultimate Sin, and listen to Ultimate Sin these last 24 hours. I don't know, man. It might start to be edging out Bark for me, but it's gonna be hard to talk Waiting for Darkness off Bark at the Moon. But I don't know. Anyway, I got also. In other news, this is Pestifear. These guys, a long time ago,
Back, huh?
Yeah, they used to be signed on my label Eihwaz, and they're Lucas is the primary guy here. He put together a new band, and they got a new vinyl out, and it sounds like they just picked right up where they left off. This is an amazing record. And I highly recommend it. I haven't, spun as much as I want to yet. Obviously, kind of derailed. I just got it, and it's kind of derailed this week. But everything I've heard is amazing. So it's definitely check these guys out, man. I'd say probably this is like the release that musically I enjoy the most out of everything I've ever worked with. So I really like these guys a lot. So anyway, Pestifear. And
like that Tosca CD too, the Tosca or whatever.
Yeah. And of course we had the
Vex,
the Spectral or Not Right split was awesome too. And Cold Fellows was great. I don't know. Anyway. But yeah, went out and found this. So now
it's a great record.
Yeah. Some good stuff, outside of just the Ozzy this week. A lot of old stuff, but yeah. So yeah, I gotta stop talking about Ozzy now before I get more bummed out.
How about you, Kellen?
Well, sorry that I missed last week. I love Onslaught's the Force. So, but my van was attacked by a possum, and so I had some car troubles and couldn't make it in. But this I feel this Friday is going to be like a heavy metallurgy group therapy session. Everyone's going to be able to sort of air their pain and discomfort.
Zoller's going to be on it, so he's going to be quizzing us on what he thinks we should think the best Ozzy songs are.
I'm sure lead us all in song.
Yeah.
So to kind of get off the Ozzy conversation, hopefully this coming weekend I'm gonna put together a video that I've been kind of circling for a while now regarding sort of Swedish death metal. But for me, it was kind of in the question you brought up last week regarding, like, in some ways, you could say a band like the influence that Discharge had on England and English thrash, I think, is pretty important, right? To talk
they
about.
weaponized the D beat.
Oh, I mean, so important, right? So, for me though, a band like Discharge. Now, when I was a much younger person, this band was very important to me. So this is let me get this right. Lycanthropic, punk, Wolfpack.
I listened to one of their albums last week. I don't know which. It's really dark. I don't know. It's out in the other room. Anyway, good band.
Yeah, but for anyone who's like gets into that, this is middle of the 90s for me when I was early teens. There's probably some very mentoring gatekeepers who kind of say, hey, if you're going to be into that band, you really need to listen to this band. So Anti-Semics, man, this was like in the same way that I think Discharge heavily influenced sort of the English thrash scene, talking about like Swedish crust punk and the influence it had on Swedish death metal, I think is also probably something worthy of conversation. So, but pulled that out. I went to Chicago this past weekend. because I went to the Chicago Philharmonic Symphony, and they were performing this. This is Gustav Mahler's Second Symphony, The Resurrection. So, anyway, something a little bit different, but
You're only 6 hours away. You should have drove up and said, hey.
I was actually looking the proximity to Grand Rapids, and I was like, man,
It's only a few hours from Grand Rapids. You
Yeah.
know, 4 hours, I guess.
But this was kind of a weekend that I wanted to set aside for Corinne and I, and so
Hell yeah.
we did a little bit of Chicago, and we'd never been there together. So anyway, pulled that out.
How was the symphony? Was it killer?
It's I don't know if you know anything about the Chicago Philharmonic, but it's one of the better symphonies in the country, if not the world.
Was it in the outside amphitheater?
Yep. It
Oh,
was in the
sweet.
Ravinia Amphitheater. I mean, the symphony's obviously it's a Mahler piece, so the orchestra's enormous, but this specific symphony also calls for like an 150-person choral choir that goes along with it. So it's just a massive sort of deal. But anyway, that was a great time at the Ravinia, which is the amphitheater you're talking about there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome place.
Yeah. So some Swedish crust punk and Gustav Mahler. So yeah,
Not bipolar at all.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, for me, it's been a sad couple days. It's a bummer. I didn't think it would impact me as much as it did, but kind of did. We'll get into it, I guess, on Friday. But yeah, I just went through all the first 8 Sabbath records with Ozzy, and I did the Dio ones too after the end of the beginning show. But yeah, I got back on this, and look, I got this record for $4 and it's in great shape. This was before records, people didn't want records anymore. You could actually walk into a store and have fun digging for stuff, and it was all good shape. So yeah, this one I got for $3.99 at the same record store. Sabotage, maybe my favorite Ozzy era, but again, I've circled back. I'm getting more and more into the deep cut era of Sabbath. Never Say Die I've always loved. Technical Ecstasy, it's been a grower for sure, but it's amazing. And then what I did miss out on in the last go around was this guy right here. And to be honest, I really liked this when it came out. I felt like kind of like the only one. All the old Sabbath heads were like, "Oh, it sucks. There's no Bill. It sucks." But I'm like, it's okay. I haven't touched it since the month after it came out, and it was good to listen to it last night. They played it too safe. It's a very safe record. But there's some cool arrangements on here. There's, the songs take a minute to get somewhere, but when they get there, it's like, there's Sabbath. There's that uplifting feeling in there. But yeah, there's some kind of dud riffs on here. But Ozzy sounds good, and some of the songs are good. And of course, $3.99. Come on, man. You can't even get into a conversation at that price for these records anymore. But yeah, it sucks. Ozzy, what a bummer. But yeah, tonight we're here to discuss this album, Ruins of Beverast. This is Foulest Semen of a Sheltered Elite. A little bit about the band for those who are unaware. The Ruins of Beverast is a German black and doom metal project formed by Alexander von Meilenwald in 2003. 6 albums have been released under the moniker Through Van Records. Since 2013, von Meilenwald has also performed live with an expanded lineup under the band's name. Apart from occasional appearances by sessions musicians, he continues to perform all instruments and vocals on the band's studio material. Der Spiegel called the third album, Foulest Semen of a Sheltered Elite, a highly complex album and rated it 8 out of 10. So there you go. Thanks, Der Spiegel.
Guess we don't need to do our album club tonight. We can just
end of the show. Der Spiegel has spoken. 8 out of 10. And it's obviously a must buy for Jim because he owns it. So, so let's talk about first impressions. We'll get going here with Logan.
Yeah, I was immediately intimidated by the pull for sure last week when I knew I had a week to digest Ruins of Beverast album. I had not heard this one. I've heard the three most recent ones. You guys already covered this one.
Great.
This is a very demented and like kind of claustrophobic sounding record to me. Very haunting stuff. And then, of course, Exuvia was actually the first one I found, and then I thankfully was around for when this came out. And enjoy all three. I think Exuvia is my favorite, but they all took journeys for me to kind of unlock their, the depths and the magnitude of what the music was actually doing, and to really dive into all the songs. I mean, 80-minute long albums, 12-minute long songs. This is not a day affair, or really even a week-long affair to me. Like it took like over a year to really get into a Thule Grimoire. That being said, when I started listening to Foulest Semen, what a title, by the way, love it. It was kind of immediate. I hit play, like the drum drops and then the music goes right into it, like right into like the clean singing, the choral chanting and stuff. And then within the first minute, there's this massive, epic, melodic guitar riff that kind of comes out of nowhere and just, captures your attention, and definitely captured my attention. So I was honestly surprised and immediately engaged from like the first minute of the first song. And for the most part, that kind of carried through the whole runtime on the first spin. I mean, I think I lost myself maybe there in the middle, but there was a lot of variety, which is typical for the Ruins of Beverast sound. But there was variety, but then it was more recognizable. Like some of the songs were already standing out to me, which usually it takes at least 2 or 3 listens for me to start recognizing songs and stuff. So yeah, I was impressed that on the first spin I was really starting to immediately enjoy a Ruins of Beverast album. Like I was prepared to have to wait until Tuesday, the 11th hour, kind of to really have it click. But no, it was a bit more immediate, and I think it was kind of the songwriting, but then also the production feels a bit more open, a bit more clean, almost kind of warmer sounding than some of the other albums that I've heard. So yeah, I was immediately impressed and kind of excited and hopeful with this one, which is not what I was expecting from a Ruins album.
All right, Kellen.
So I first heard about this band, or this record, I should say, from a friend named Rolf, by the way, from South Africa.
Rock and Rolf from Running Wild.
I mean, what a name. So what could be wrong? But he came along, he's like, you should listen to this new Ruins record. And you listen to Rain Upon the Impure, and it just like the first 2 records were okay. Unlock the Shrine. I was Nagelfar. I was not aware of them, so they kind of missed me. But I'm sure, like, if you were into part of the whatever, aware of black metal in the 90s, I really kind of was late in that time period. I was listening to Wolfpack, but those first 2 records were good, but he really asked, like, you should go back and check this one out. The atmosphere on this one is special. And that's a phrase that gets thrown around, I think, so casually. And it's not to diminish like the validity of the statement, but it almost becomes ubiquitous to where it no longer really means anything. And I did not. So I kind of thought, like, all right, you've heard, like, at this point, it's 2009. I've heard a lot of second wave black metal. I've heard, Mystifier. I've heard of the Greek scene. Like, I kind of have an idea of what atmosphere is or what you're trying to get at when you recommend a record based on that. And I to Logan's point, this record kind of opens with almost like a timpani strike, it sounds like, and then just sort of the drawbridge falls into the entire listen. And I was, grabbed my attention and felt like a much more I don't want to necessarily like say a better realized vision of what this band could be by comparison to the first two records. Being a fan of this band and like looking over their entire discography, Foulest Semen for me always felt like the turning point in the sound.
Yeah.
So I loved it back then. I've have a really strong affection towards it now, and having such strong memories for something that's been over, when I guess 16 years ago. It stayed with me, and when I tuned in to watch the Onslaught review last week, and Jim pulled this unfairly because it really was my choice, and he was thrust into the situation, so he pulled a rabbit out of his hat with this one. But yeah, I love this record.
All right. I'm going to save you till last, Jim, so you can lead us into the thing. Is that cool? Yeah. For me, I was a fan of Naglfar. So I've been kind of with this band since the start. Their first two albums, Unlock the Shrine and Rain Upon the Impure, a bit more, it felt like a continuation of Naglfar in some ways, maybe a little faster or a little more murky. This album, it felt like Kellen mentioned, it felt like a seismic shift. It still maintained that murkiness, that unique sound, but things slowed way down. We got far doomier. And the one thing that stands out that sets this band apart sound wise and sonically is the bass is the lead instrument. Those melody lines you're hearing, they're played on the bass and with a lot of effects. God damn it. A lot of effects on it. And it's time for a new mic thing. This thing is busted. Cool if I get to hold on to it the whole time. There we go. What the hell was I saying? Yeah, the bass, you hear those melody lines in the songs, it's the bass guitar. And it really gives this band its identity. There's other things too. Alexander's voice is very unique as well. And one thing that he really focused on a lot on here is this like the chanting of the priests, we'll say. Well, all these layered chanting, and the fact that the black metal screams feel like they're creeping in from another dimension, being transmitted from another dimension. The chanting is kind of loud in the mix, and at times I think a bit pompous. Some of the melody lines that he chose on it sound a little show tuney to me, which is kind of doesn't work for me on a couple songs, but that is a super minor complaint up against a record that, like I said, a seismic shift. We're starting to get a lot more emotional with composition and songwriting and layers, a lot more interesting layers going on too. But first impression, definitely a step in a very good direction. Jim.
Yeah. So the first time I heard Ruins was Marty and we were riding back from Grand Rapids, and he put in, I believe it was Unlock the Shrine. You put in, Marty. And I thought it was cool, but it was really kind of hard to make out what was going on. The production is so raw and it's just like all the instruments are sort of at the same level, so it just kind of washes. It's really hard to kind of separate everything. And then subsequently, Rain Upon the Impure was better,
Mm-hmm.
but it was still, you hadn't quite found that production voice, that Alexander would get later on. So I ended up buying both of those first two, but it wasn't until, I later on, I somehow missed Foulest and got, Blood Vaults first, and I was like blown away, and to this day, it's one of my, all-time favorite records.
It's a tough album to follow up. I mean, he kind of nailed it quickly. I mean, this album was a transition, and then that one's like kapow,
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the way I feel about it. I love everything about it, the cover art, everything. But going back and then hearing Foulest, I can say, oh, okay, I love what you said, Kellen. The drawbridge came down. It's exactly, that was such a great, eloquent way to put it, because that is what it feels like going into this record. After hearing the first two, enjoying them, liking them, really loving Blood Vaults, and then hearing this, it was like, this is when, Alexander entered into that sound of his that I most identify with, that I enjoy the most. Like, this was really the beginning of that. This is, I mean, hell, even one of the songs is called like Blood Vaults, so it works on a number of different levels. But yeah, man, the production is amazing. It's so layered. Finally I could hear all the instruments individually very, very well. But not just that, all those other sort of like, electronic, like, accoutrement that he puts in his stuff, the samples, the synths, the choirs, everything, the Marshall industrial sounding drums that he'll throw in every once in a while, that kind of additional percussion, all of that stuff was, for me for the first time, very clear. And hearing this and seeing it kind of lead up into Blood Vaults was really amazing. And because it's such a seismic shift from Rain Upon the Impure to this, I think, from a production standpoint. And don't get me wrong, man, I love dirty, raw, crusty punk black metal just as much as everyone else. I like a raw, crazy recording, but when you can embrace, sophisticated production techniques and not lose the evil, not lose the darkness, not lose the intensity, and in fact find some way to push that even further, that's just amazing musicianship to me. That's amazing engineering skills, by engineering, studio engineering. So yeah, this record, I instantly loved it. I played it over and over and over and over and over after I first got it. And, pretty much, Ruins is never far from my rotation. I just really enjoy them because, I love my old thrash. I love sounds that I'm familiar with. You guys just saw me pull up a bunch of old stuff from the 80s here, with the exception of Pestifere. But I also like metal that I really feel is pushing the genre forward. And when I hear Alexander's output, that's what I feel. So
100% agree with you there. I mean, he's single-handedly, I mean, obviously by himself here, all these albums have been him. He is kind of pushing it forward in a way that is not alienating. It's not too much too soon. The layers aren't too offensive or grating. I don't know. You know what? The power flickered and I hear thunder. So if I go out, just continue on without me. But
well, you're still here, but it looks like we lost Logan.
Logan seems to be struggling here.
Yeah, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
There you are. Yes.
A crazy storm just popped up out of nowhere, and we lost power for a second. So miraculously, I'm back. But I'll make the most.
That is so weird that you and Marty both lost power at the same moment.
Wait, Marty, you lost power too?
He said
it flashed, and I looked out and I see the winds blowing. I thought I heard some thunder in the distance. So if I lose power, continue on. I think we're still stable. Hopefully we'll.
It might just be me and Kellen then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise. Good luck, guys.
Whoa.
All right. So I guess we have a question now, right?
Yep.
So my question is, like, when a band is really focused on bringing in a very intense, layered atmosphere, and that becomes equally as important as the actual music itself, and I think the Ruins is a band where that's the case. I mean, where their electronic implementations and layering is just as important as the guitar and the bass and the drums and the vocals. Do you feel that detracts from the metalness of an album, or are all of those like additional elements added into like the core instrumentation of metal, can they really just be just as heavy in their own way?
Logan,
I got power. Let's answer. Yeah, I mean, I personally think it adds to it, to me. Like, metal existing by itself and only on what is considered metal, I think, is not a very interesting way to continue a genre, decade after decade. Like, this came out in 2009, where pushing 4 decades in, and now in 2025, that's even more accurate to say that you got to look elsewhere outside of, you know, metal to find influences that can make your music even heavier, like more emotionally heavy, more, well, even heavier, like thematically as well. Like, for example, with Foulest Semen, there's some industrial elements in here.
Yeah.
I think really add just how heavy this atmosphere is, you know? And this album, I think, would not be as impactful if not for that influence from the industrial scene. And the presence of the ever ominous keyboards, too, absolutely adds to the overall feel and I think heaviness of it. And take that guitar tone that kind of pops up predominantly. It's like kind of is dreamlike. It's very melodic, but then at the same time, it's a very heavy tone. I have no idea where, I don't know this guy's name off the top of my head, but where he pulled that from. But it adds so much to the album, and I think makes it more interesting and dynamic. And yes, I think still heavy. Like, I think if you're only pulling from, you know, metal to make stuff heavier, you're going to end up with, well, you know, look at what death metal was in like 2004 or 5, you know, where it's just like, you know, more brutal and technical than anything else. But I think lacking of a certain dynamic and interesting influence, you know, it needed to bring in other influences to kind of diversify, but still, you know, bring the heaviness. So my best go.
We're gonna lose power. I know it. Sorry. Anyway, Kellen.
Right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get what you're asking, Jim. It's like sometimes the cinematography of a film can sort of dominate the experience of it, or like the way an author will describe a location in a book, like it acts as an additional character. It's like I think what I think is interesting is like metal as a genre should just have as much of an avenue to reach into that sort of like additional element to inform the experience for the audience as any other genre, right? I think horror films do that, and obviously the relationship between heavy metal and horror is well established, right? So I what's interesting though is it seems so explicitly explored with Ruins' work, like. And I think that's somehow why it gets grouped into, we'll talk about the songwriting a little bit later on, but, you know, to Marty's point, there's something palatable about this experience, right? This is not a band that sometimes gets tagged as like avant-garde. The experience is not one of complicated dissonance, right? It's not sort of like complex melodic structure that is juxtaposition against one another. Like that is not the experience when you listen to Ruins. But because it is so explicitly exploring something that may be secondary in our minds when we think about the genre, I think it gets thrown into being an avant-garde band or experimental band, right? Where it doesn't sound like whatever Deathspell or Ulcerate or whatever you want to talk about, bands that somehow operate in that space. So, but I 100% in terms of the lived experience throughout these records is like you are forced to sort of grapple with Alexander's sort of vision with atmosphere here. If you are only engaged looking for like memorable onslaught riffs, you're gonna miss the show, right? Like that's not what this is about. So I kind of see where you're heading is like I don't feel it detracts at all in terms of being a heavy metal record. I think one of the cool things about it is like it is clearly pulling from different genres, but I always have a difficult time pinning down where they're sort of lining up here. So for me, I like full send. I absolutely think it's an accomplishment as a heavy metal band.
I'm going to agree with Kellen here. I think if done correctly, the industrial influences and outside influence, you know, some noise, some dark ambient can really benefit the the dynamics and the atmosphere of an album, my problem has always been, and this kind of goes on both sides of the aisle here, that metal dudes are so used to meddling when they try to add the industrial in, it feels like they do it in such a rudimentary way. It doesn't, they don't approach the instruments or the implementation of inset instruments with the knowledge and the know-how that people within the electronic genre could have. But on the same token, the same can be said from the industrial side, because there's a lot of industrial bands that have messed with metal samples and shit over the years. Some do it well, others it's kind of the same thing. It's like they don't know what to do with it, so they use it in the most rudimentary way. But pleased to report on the Ruins of Beverast here, I think it starts on the Restless Mills track 7. He uses like a synthetic drum loop to kind of capitalize on you can hear like the things clanging and banging in the background of a mill, and it's done really well conceptually. It's simplistic, it's a loop, and there's other little things that creep in here too with the synths and stuff that perk the arrows. You could tell he's been listening to some industrial stuff. He does it really well. It's really well seasoned throughout the music here, never takes away from what he's doing with the metal stuff, and the way the album is produced and it's kind of off in the background, it adds to the aura and the atmosphere of the album. So in this case, it's done well. And I'm not saying all metalheads fail tinkering with electronics, because some don't, but over the years it's like, it's cool. You applaud them for trying, but it's like it doesn't have the same. If it was on an industrial album, it would fit and sit much better. Jim, what are your thoughts on the same question?
Yeah, I think in lesser hands, giving, an even amount of like airspace to non-traditional instrumentation in metal can, detract from its intensity, but Ruins is a band where it's almost 50-50 with the atmospheric, you know, contributions, mixing with the core elements to make metal what it is. And even though that's the case, I feel like they're done with such like, finesse and attention to detail in terms of like keeping it dark, keeping it like far from anything resembling camp in any way. You know what I mean? It's taken very seriously and just kept frankly evil, and
Yeah.
and so you feel like, after you cross that drawbridge, you're immediately walking around a very long stairwell down into the dungeons, which is the very smallest amount of torch lighting your way.
Yeah.
And I feel that what makes that experience complete is those additional elements in here. In lesser hands and lesser bands, I'd be the first one to call that out. Like, well, what's making this week is the goofy, addition of such and such, but that's not the case here. I feel what makes Ruins stand out to me is the addition for that. I mean, it's not just that. I mean, the way he plays his tremolo wrist, where he bends while he's like playing like 16th notes and bends them back down. That is some weird stuff. There are other bands that do it too, but just the way he phrases it is very unique.
Yep.
That's just one aspect of it. But when you bring that sort of like, originality, but still like, to Kellen's point, like that's a black metal riff, that's a doom metal riff, that's even like maybe a death metal riff, like here and there, it's still, even though unique, like it's got that character that keeps it from getting like too bizarre, where it makes it like a difficult listen for, at least for me, it's not a difficult listen because I hear that core, but what takes that and makes it like, way more, just like, kind of like foggy for me, or it is that, that electric accompaniment, where, the sampling, the additional percussion, the choirs, all of that stuff, gives it like even more color than it already had. I think it would have survived on its own as like a Black Doom band without that stuff and been pretty awesome. But with that additional layering that he gives, an equal amount of attention to, it elevates, the output to a very high level, but also makes it heavier somehow, and that's how I'll answer my own question. Like, does it make it heavier? And in this case, in Ruins' case, I think it does make it heavier. So
yeah, agreed. All right, yeah, good question, man. Hey, let's talk about the production. Nope, let's discuss the musicality and composition of Foulest Semen of a Sheltered Elite.
Yeah, I think, I guess to start things off, I think it's cool how kind of visual this album feels. Like, Jim, you were describing what you kind of see as you're listening to it. You're envisioning this like stairwell that's like kind of winding. I guess it's the production and then just how the instruments are implemented. It does conjure an image to mind, or like really a world, honestly. To me, it's just so massive and vast. If it doesn't feel quite as claustrophobic, like this album right here, Blood Vaults, feels claustrophobic to me. This one feels expansive, like I'm in the ruins of a fading civilization. You got the dying sun, kind of like the eye on the album cover, way up top, and it's just like flooding the world with like cold, dead orange light.
And it's raining blood from a lacerated sky.
And it's raining blood from a lacerated sky.
Bleeding its horror.
See, visual right there. Yeah.
In an Oakland Raiders football jersey, yeah.
Good job, Kerry King. Yeah, but no, I just it feels like a journey, kind of going through this world. It definitely takes you away, transports you away, transportive. And it makes you wonder, like, what are we talking about? What are we singing about? Like, obviously, I know what Blood Vaults is about. You guys did a great job of covering that, but I haven't had the chance to delve deeper into what a Foulest Semen of the Sheltered Elite is about. I know it's something to do with a historical, probably somewhat socio-political events. It feels quite scathing and like definitely angry, definitely evil, and a lot of Latin going on. But like, I think this kind of ties into the feel of the music itself. There's a certain Mediterranean, Middle Eastern kind of flair to like some of the melodies that are on display here, especially, mainly by that epic heavy guitar tone. Like, I already mentioned it, but that's like one of the MVPs of the album for me, is just that guitar tone that will come in and come out throughout various songs. And it's just like this warm and like, it kind of feels like a caressing kind of feel, but it's ominous at the same time. And it's like one of the main hooks. I think to me, it's best used in the opening song, I Raise the Stone as a Ghastly Memorial. Like, I just love how it's used in there. And from there, it's used kind of sparsely throughout the album, and it helps texture certain points and climactic crescendos as it moves forward. Another part, the vocal variance is insanely impressive. Like, we're talking the choral piece, which is like way up in front. We got the black metal shouts and snarls, and then the most guttural vocals that I think I've, it's up there for most guttural, that almost feel like they're coming from underneath you. Like, when you're listening to them in like closed headphones, it'll like pop up over here. It's really cool just how much variety is here vocally as well. And I think all this stuff just makes it interesting and engaging, and is what helps these 12-minute long songs and this 80-minute long album stick out to you. And the influences outside of metal that help to make it heavier, as we just talked about, also are kind of used sparingly and make it more interesting as well. Like, the industrial element is not throughout the whole album. Like, it kind of comes in, as Marty said, at
Track
the
7.
Restless Mills, and then I think it pops up a little bit towards the end of the final track as well. But then there's also tracks that are just like straight up like, oh man, this is a black metal song I'm listening to. We're not much doom going on tracks like Blood Vaults or Gods and Sanguined Bestiaries. It's just very just fast paced and for the throat, but then it'll always go back to the doom kind of undertone that is really the winding path that this album takes you on. So it's quite an epic journey. It does feel
It's a little germy too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
It's a little germy.
germy.
Like you're gonna catch something from this one.
It's a warm album. I'm telling you, it is.
I mean,
it's a petri dish in a way. I think.
The semen is foul.
Yeah. Oh,
It's germy.
Yeah. Yeah. The atmosphere is absolutely another instrument in and of itself. Like honestly, being able to go through and just listen to like the instruments is one thing, but then if you go through again and listen to like what the keyboards are doing and what all these vocal layers are doing in the background, it's like a whole different experience with some of these songs. And it's, you know, it's eye-opening to have like two different experiences with the same album. And I'm definitely not finished diving into the depths of this album because I think there's still a lot of layers to uncover. So yeah, impressive what they were able to accomplish, you know, and not lose the listener in the process.
Right on, Kellen.
Yeah, so I guess much longer compositions for each song here. The majority of the record is made up of tracks that, you know, eclipse the, I guess I'd say 8-minute mark. Slow plotting stuff. For me, so Logan's kind of brought this up a couple times, and I don't know, Marty, you said that you think it's a bass. I don't know if it's just a guitar, but
It's a bass. It's a bass.
It's a bass, right?
I think he played bass in.
He played drums in Nagelfar.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a bass lines to me. He plays them on the bass.
To me, they sound like horns. So for me, I hear like what would be like the register from like a tuba sort of trombone sort of like that's the thing about it that feels epic. It's like these massive sort of I don't it doesn't feel to me like a traditional bass guitar. He's distorting it and playing it in a very
there's effects on it, a lot of effects on it. Yeah.
And so it just feels to me like these big sort of like weird sort of horn sections that arrive. And that's kind of where in my mind what I feel when I listen to the part that I think Logan's talking about, because there are a bunch of different moments on this record, you have that effect. Man, I think the guitar choices here, you know, we've just like you're talking about the bass as being the affect, like the effects going on there. His choice in guitar voicing, I think, is really interesting. Because if you're like, well, it's kind of black metal, but it's, you know, down tuned, you know, it doesn't sound like Eternus, right? It doesn't have like the warm fuzz of doom. It's too dry and cold. So it lives in this weird sort of nebulous space. It doesn't sound fuzzy to me like a doom band would.
You know, you said cold, and I'm listening to this album, and to me, I'm in a dungeon with moist walls dripping. That's the way this sound feels. It doesn't feel cold, and it feels like it's dank, like dank, man.
Sure. But for me, that has to do with like, there's a lack of breathing room there. Like, I don't feel a big connection or disconnect between where guitar lines and bass sort of live here in the mix. And I have definitely felt that was the overarching character for the first, you know, like you listen to Rain Upon the Impure, that sort of like morass of guitar wall. It's difficult to sort of parse that. And I think the improved, we'll get to production notes later. I think it's improved. The fidelity of this record definitely helps out. But it's been always difficult. It does not sound like a traditional doom record for me. It does not sound like, in terms of the guitar choices, nor a black metal record. It doesn't sound like so it is a very curated guitar choice when I listen to this album. I do my addition here, I'll point to with the You kind of talked a little bit about the sort of industrial electronic elements. Industrial, for me, in my mind, also had this very much like it emerged when sort of tech was kind of like coming around, and that gave it its life, but it also like operated in terms of like an ideological framework to play within. In terms of like dystopian futurism is kind of like what I always associate with industrial. This record is, I mean, this is a Jim pick, so anti-Christian. Like it is, that is 100% there.
Yet he's been listening to Ozzy and Sabbath all week,
Yeah,
which is
you know what I mean?
the opposite of that.
This is so like but in a very sort of poetic kind of way that feels very modern. But the fact that it's exploring sort of ancient anti-Christian, you know, these are references, you know, Logan brought up with it earlier in terms of, you know, Mount Sinai of Moloch, that's a biblical reference. Obviously, Cain is a biblical reference. Like these are things that are specifically pulling from biblical stories. And the reason I want to point that out is like, I love how he's able to incorporate a genre associated with very sort of modern tech futurism in a way, in an old satanic sort of ritual environment, and it not feel disjointed. I think it takes a kind of a practiced hand to do that, because this record is very much a all-out assault on Christianity, lyrically, thematically, and I think the world that it's building is very much to, I think, Logan's point about they're forcing you, I think, at least to envision a sort of biblical geography here. And I think that's the kind of what they're trying to build. You look at the album artwork, you look at the lyrical content. So that the fact that they're able to incorporate industrial ones and not feel forced, I think is to their credit for sure.
All right, Jim.
Just getting a kick out of Tim's comment there.
Oh, this would look out, Portal. There's room in the trash.
He'll put it right beside the other Ruins of Beverast album he put in the trash a couple years ago.
Oh, he didn't like that one either. Okay.
He really hated Blood Waltz. I think we almost got into an argument over it in the chat.
Right on.
I expected it. It's all good. So yeah, man, musical composition. So, you know, what do we got here besides those core instrumentation? And we've got, you know, timpani, we've got horns, you know, we've got choirs, we've got, you know, guttural vocals, we've got spoken vocals, we've got, you know, clean singing, we've got triumphant sounding keyboards, we've got, you know, some very simple, like almost something Varg would do here and there. On you can hear that on the first track. You've got, you know, really bizarre instrumentals, you know, that are almost more noise than music. So how can you do all of that without it just sounding like a trash compactor? And that's not even half of like everything that I've written down here, where I was just trying to like call out like certain little different sounds. You know what I mean? Well, the answer is, I don't know. And yeah, but you know, because I couldn't do it, you know what I mean? So all I can do is sort of like guess. And what I think it really takes is a really deep understanding of how you can pull music together out of the ether using disparate instrumentation. And I think that takes like a real, like, you know, a skill set that, yes, you know, can be learned and can grow, and you can, you know, expand your own horizons through, you know, practice and hard work and study. And I do think that's a component of what Alexander's done when you see the progression of his production techniques throughout the years, and the depth of his songwriting and the complexity of it. But I also think that on some level, you know, being able to create through all of that composition a true feeling of dread that like really permeates you, like it crawls into your skin while you're listening to this record. And I think that comes from, you know, not just that that study element that any good musician, or at least I'll say better musicians than myself, adhere to. I think that there's just raw talent that Alexander has, man. I think that's what his X factor is. I
Clear
think
vision.
he has a clear vision. I think he was born to do this. I think he was born to, take these core elements of metal, make it decidedly metal. Like they're churning down-tuned black metal riffs, like, long and powerful, eight measure, open chord, doom riffs, all of that's there, the double bass, the blasting, great, cymbal work, drums, but all of these other elements too that are stay, equally, in like that sound band right in front of you. He was able to, think about all that, lay it all out, compose it, and make it work. And so I think that, to pull that off to in my opinion, to this really high level that he has, there is that extra element of just like, it's innate, and I have met musicians like that throughout the years who have just really blown me away with the way they're able to write, and come up with something very unique, where I've always felt my own, riff writing. I'm like, I know where that inspiration came from. I can point directly to it, and, with Alexander's output, and this being one of the highlights here, in his discography, I think that it's very difficult to do that with his music, to say like, I know where that came from. With a clear, and confident, air about you when you make that statement. I think it's really difficult to do that. And so musicality and composition is on a high level, not just because of the effort and the work and in the construction that he was able to do with this record, but I really think that on an innate level, whether it was a gift from Lucifer himself, he has a talent that was able to, glue everything together.
For me, I agree with what all these guys have said, and I could go on and mirror a lot of that similar thoughts, but I think this album does not need to be 80 minutes long. It didn't. It could have been 60 minutes long. You listen to my main complaint with this record is some of the doom parts. I like them, but he goes on too long on some of them. And every song, other than maybe God's Ensanguinated Bestiaries, that song is kind of a ripper. But he goes on this journey, and then you hit a middle part of the song where he's kind of churning along on this doom riff, and he's not bringing that Middle Eastern occult weird melody lines in there. I mean, there's so much space for something melodically interesting to engage the listener on this journey, and he kind of leaves you hanging for a lot longer than you should. And I don't know if it's just because he's really trying to lay the framework of the song with this newfound doom appreciation he's working with. The sound of it is all good. Thankfully, the sound is, like I said, so arid, I guess you would say. It's just such a warm and cavernous vibe to it. The sound kind of saves it in a lot of ways. There was just numerous times throughout the album where I felt, okay, there's not much happening here. You blessed us with this and this and this, and you hint at these really super tasty melody lines that are super unique. They're kind of like the trademark Ruins of Beverast sound characteristic, if you want, and then to not expand upon those when he drops them, they're little nuggets in a sea of kind of boring doom. But it's not that way on every song. When he gets the combination, the mix just right, it's when the album really opens up and it gets really, really good. But yeah, and it's a minor complaint because overall the sound is so interesting. The production, it gives you a lot of space. There's a lot of space for him to layer in these instruments and not become suffocating, like we mentioned earlier. And there's so much space and room. He could have done more to keep those breadcrumbs. Okay, there's a really tasty part coming. Make the journey to that tasty part less of a slog is all I'm saying. Yeah, my only complaint there, but it's one guy. Typically when you are a one-man musician, you look at countless demos by Leviathan, or you look at Zaster, like all, back in the day where these black metal bands were putting out, churning out these one metal projects. Some guys don't do a lot of self-editing. If I wrote the riff, I'm going to use the riff type of thing. And I don't know if that's, this guy seems to have a higher, he's more higher evolved in songwriting. And I just think he was trying to get something a bit different out of these longer Doom sections, and kind of forgot to add in the secret sauce to really keep me engaged anyway. I mean, everybody else doesn't seem to have a problem with this, but it was a bit long-winded at times. Like I said, this doesn't need to be, Iron Maiden doesn't need to be putting out 80 some minute long albums. Ruins of Beverast doesn't need to be putting out 80-minute long albums. It's too much.
That's like all they've done though. That's their whole thing. So maybe I was giving them a pass.
Blood Vaults, though, he got the combinations right. He got the good mix. He didn't leave you hanging for 3-4 minutes on this, But
just picture like this: you're stuck in like a elevator trip into hell, and you're like waiting to go to the next lower level before you get off in the door, and got to take a little bit of time to descend there.
You don't want to go right to the ninth circle.
Yeah.
All right. Said my piece on that production. Jim.
So we're on to production. So, we've already been alluding to this throughout the whole conversation, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but absolutely one of the highlights of this record, and his musical journey. I think up until this album, it smoked what he had done before production wise. Now you could finally hear the true expanse of his capabilities as a musician. You could hear every instrument clearly. You could choose to focus your ear in one area or another. There's great separation, in the production here, where there's basically none on the first album. Separation, ha ha ha, I laugh at you. When you're listening to that first record.
It's like a wadded up piece of paper with a drum beat behind
it. Yeah. Unlike the Shrine is definitely, just a wall of static. And I still love it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like this. I think for me, my favorite era of Ruins starts here and then continues onward. And it's largely due to that production. Now I can make out everything, and and also that sort of like repeated electric acoustic refrain that and variants of that he does not only on this album but every album subsequent from this. That to your point, Marty, that's kind of like that, signature Alexander, like, not distorted riff melody style that he throws on it. But I love that. I love that there's that signature there that sort of kind of centers in.
I want more of it though. That's the thing. It's so tasty.
It well, and I think
longer.
I think on other albums, especially Exuvia, you get more.
Yeah,
you get more of that. But anyway, back to production. Like now you can really hear that, kind of like, touch to his, songwriting that was completely buried, or maybe even absent, on the earlier records. It at least was definitely hard to hear, but here it's all easy to hear. And, every time I listen to it, with that sort of like, clarity that he was able to, conjure in his abilities as a producer and engineer, like I hear something different every time. There's so much attention to detail going on with like the additions to the songs above and beyond bass, guitar, drums, that I'm always hearing something different. And, unlike you, Marty, I have never once felt like this was an 80-minute record. Like it for me, it goes by quickly. I put this on and I'm like, wow, I'm already, at Arcane Pharmacon. Like, okay, cool. Like it just, for me, it rushes by, what I mean? But that's just because, personal taste, like it sits right in this very sweet spot for me as a listener. Where
I just like those tasty moments so much that when they're not there, and I'm noticing 2 minutes of kind of the same riff, not doing much.
Mhm.
I just want more of that. Capitalize
Well,
on it, you know.
I think I have an appreciation for Funeral Doom that kind of gets me through those longer
There is
moments.
some Funeral Doom for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I ride those out that way. But yeah, but yeah, like I said, not going to be a dead horse. Like I've already alluded to it, production is top notch here. I wish I had the capability to do something, that had this crazy combination of caustic and clear that he has accomplished with this record.
Right on. Kellen.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add because you've kind of been dancing around this all night. But yeah, the fidelity of this record, the production of this record, the mastering of this record is like a major step forward, and I think into what this band ends up becoming. And this record is better for it. The thing, I guess, is in terms of like the size of it or the dimensions of it, to me, the drumming and the vocals are like kind of fore to aft, if you will. Like to your point about there's like the Blood Vaults track here, which is sort of a series that has been going on. Like it's on also, and there's the fourth track there is the first Blood Vaults, the original Malador. And then here we get another Blood Vaults on Foulest Semen. It's a follow-up song, part 2. But that song has a bit like sort of seated in the back seat is a much more traditional black metal vocal style. And right, behind the driver's wheel is like the Alex von Meilenwald that you're getting throughout the entirety of the record. So there's like that kind of spacing happening with the vocals. And I do think, given his history as a drummer, they do sit appropriately kind of center in the mix. As busy as this record, or as dense as it sounds for me, cymbals, hi-hats, ride, everything like sounds pretty clear. And I think there's an appreciation as a drummer, just how present he should be. But the vertical, horizontal plane of this record, and the records that follow, is just enormous. It's a huge sounding record. So I think in terms of the spacing and how everything is distributed, I guess that's the one thing I would want to bring out if anyone's approaching this band and looking at the sort of the next sort of few records from this project, something to keep in mind.
Logan.
Yeah, I mean, once again, just echoing. I feel like I've been wanting to, or basically been talking about the production on every single question leading up to this. It definitely helps with just the feel of this album. Definitely agree with Kellen about just the lateral, plane that it feels mammoth. It just larger than life. It helps with, the feeling of a journey and like creating its own, Rain and Blood kind of world. It's epic, and I think it's a big part of why I enjoy the album as much as I do, and why I don't think it definitely feels like a long album, but not quite 80 minutes for me. The runtime does not feel as arduous, and mainly it's because there is separation in everything. Just to mention what Jim already said, like when you're going through these more doomy parts, I think you can dig a little deeper or look elsewhere, and there's like some keyboards or some synths or like some interesting orchestral moments going on. Like there's always layers.
There's something else to turn your ear toward.
I don't know.
I completely agree, Logan.
Yeah, like I just never heard like, oh, this is just the only doom section. There's always something else going on that I could kind of focus on. I mean, it's tough to just sit and like listen to an album exclusively that's 80 minutes long. So I'm guilty of like having to do chores while listening to this, or being in the middle of a work day, and
we all do.
So that helps with the passage of time, right? But I still felt engaged, and still felt like I was able to focus on certain elements, and I was never necessarily bored. I mean, there were certain sections in the middle where I would lose my place and be like, "Oh shit, what song are we on?" But I was never bored for sure. I think the production definitely helps. Callan already nailed it with the drum production. I really love the drum production. The snare is a thing of beauty. I love the snare sound on this. It like, you can tell it's organic. it feels different every time. Like you can tell it sounds like he's just hitting it at different angles when he's playing. It's really cool to listen to, and the whole kit sounds, organic like that as well. Not computer generated, but and that helps clear the room for the industrial elements to seep in as well, and like to feel separate from the drum the drum performance on the Mills song. Towards the end, the drum starts playing the same beat as the industrial like heartbeat section that's going on, and it really adds. And you can tell there's two things working in tandem to just make that song heavier as it careens towards the end of it. And I think you wouldn't notice that as much if the production wasn't as good. Like you can hear that little industrial heartbeat throughout the whole of that song. And yeah, that's impressive for the production for sure. So yeah. And one more highlight for the vocals, like just how vocal it'll be in like one ear, and then it'll be the low guttural, and it'll just like slowly drag to the other ear. Like the creepiest sound ever.
Like a slug sliming
like
through your brain.
Yeah, it's just. There was one time literally earlier today. I wasn't even, I was probably working, and that happened, and it just like fucking, gave me the goosebumps for sure. I was like, oh shit, that's startling.
It's kind of rad. Yeah, it's kind of
very
cool
rad. The vocal production is a great thing too. So.
All right, I'm about to sneeze.
Great job, sir. Great job.
You nailed it.
I have very little to add to this. The production on here is really, really good. He did an awesome job at making things cavernous, spacious, a lot of room for what he needs to do within the construct of this album. Sounds great. It sounds like him, which is cool. It's really nice that they he sorted it out, because the first two albums, very good albums, are just, there's a lot piled on and a lot of blasting, and it's kind of a jumbled mess at times. But here it's nice and separated out and organic sounding, which is excellent. And my only minor thing is I wish she would have turned down those choir vocals a bit. They're a bit loud at times. I really like where the grim vocals sit. If he would have dialed them back a little bit, I think it'd have been a little less pompous. I'm not saying all of them are pompous. There's a few lines here and there that's like, oh, you could have picked a different kind of feel for this. But other than that, minor complaint. All the elements here make a very good album for sure. Favorite, least favorite songs? Kellen?
I really don't know if I have a least favorite on this. The one that always rips me from the listening experience, though, is the Blood Vault track. The beginning of that has almost like this much faster riffing style, and kind of backbeat drumming going on there, and it always feels to me like a song that was written from a different time period. So I guess that's I'll just start off with the one that feels a little bit, every time I put this on, disconnected from the rest of the record. I love the opening track. I Raise This Stone for me is, it's the first like sort of experience I have with this record.
You get everything that's good the album's going to be in that track.
Yeah. And it just,
more or less.
I know this could have been, to Marty's point, like that choir is part of that sort of like, whoa, listen, put you back in your seat kind of experience. I can understand if that sounds, to use your word, pompous or turtlenecky or whatever.
Moloch on ice.
Yeah, but I think it works incredibly well. It's such a great sort of like beginning to a record. It just gets down to business within the first sort of seconds. The other, I think, so Mount Sinai Moloch, for me, that epitomizes sort of the doomier element on this record. It is sort of this slow ascent. We've talked at length about the electronic elements, and to your point, Yeah, Restless Mills feels like a great sort of dystopian kind of
Yeah.
hellish landscape. Even like
A bit of Blade Runner in there with that.
Yeah, there's an interesting guitar part to that song as well. It's not quite like a traditional sort of tremolo thing going on, but it sits in the front of that song, and it's always like an eerie sort of presence. I can kind of see what you're saying. Like by the time we get to Arcane Pharmacon Messiah, like there's sort of a slow build. It gets a while to get there, but it also then launches into like a organ that inserts itself, and right from the organ it drops into like one of the to Jim mentioned there's not a lot of death metal here.
There's a Celtic. Is this the one he goes ooh, and then it goes into the Celtic Frost riffs? It's like, what the fuck is happening right now? Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's kind of like that's an almost it's a riff that does not really exist throughout the entirety of the record, but it's sort of this slow churning extreme metal kind of thing happening. And it's the only real moment to my memory on this listen that you get it. So it always is like, oh man, it's cool that they have that available to them. At 15 minutes long, I can see what you're saying, Marty. Like if that had been shaved a few minutes off of that,
there's room.
I do think, to me, whether you want to call it doom or funeral doom, whatever, this is very much sort of a record that you kind of sit down and immerse yourself inside of. And I think for me, I'm potentially more patient for those long extended sort of ritualistic passages that don't necessarily build towards anything dynamically, but more you just sort of live in the space there. So nothing really to complain. I think the interludes, there's like 3 sort of interludes on this.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are short.
Yeah.
And when listening to it, just through, I'm never distracted and doesn't feel like it bleeds or separates from one song to the other in a bad way. So, I mean, I love this record, so I have really nothing to complain about in terms of the track listing.
Logan, did you go?
No, not for favorite, least favorite, which I'm a big fan of how this album opens and closes. Like I already mentioned, I raised this stone as a ghastly memorial, and Callan already did a great job of talking about it, but it just comes in right out the gate and plunges into the dirgy choral section, and that's how you grab someone's attention right there. And then within the first minute, there's that. So it is a bass line? It's not a guitar line?
I think it is.
Like, what the hell is it?
I could be wrong. I think it's a bass line with a lot of effects. Jim, what do you think?
And I know Callan said sounds like horns, but
yeah, I'm not exactly sure, man.
It sounds like a bass to me.
You're muted, Callan.
Some water, and I got excited with Marty. Yeah, I absolutely think it's an electronic, it's a guitar, a bass, or something, because you can hear like sometimes as the riff or notes fade, it moves back into an electronic instrument. But there's these sort of propulsive or concussive
maybe it's a synth line.
I feel it's a guitar. I think it's to your point. I would agree with you. I do think it's a guitar or a bass being used, but just the effect on it just feels a little bit alien to me.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Logan.
No. I mean, I was looking for that. It's an alien feel, and it immediately stands out, and it is incorporated throughout this album. And honestly, I don't remember similar, instruments popping up on Exuvia and like the following albums. Like this seems kind of a part of the world of Foulest Semen. So what a world. But yeah, that song is a great opener, and it's a good way of showcasing everything that this album has to offer, from the choral elements, the guitar lines, and it feels a bit doomier overall. So, and it sets up a ominous tone, I think, for the album. I do lose myself a little bit in the middle with the tracks. I guess kind of to Marty's point, Mount Sinai, Moloch, and Cain's Countenance Fell. I start to lose track of where I'm at. just in that section right there, I'm like, oh, what song are we at? It's the slower, doomier sections, and I'm having a tough time placing myself on this journey. But then as soon as the Restless Mills comes on, I'm entranced. That industrial style, rhythm and heartbeat that kind of pushes it forward is just such a nice change of pace, because I really think up to this point there was nothing like that on this album. And then all of a sudden you get this like very mechanized heartbeat, like a factory or a machine that's just running continuously without stop. And yeah, it's kind of unsettling, like the first time you hear it, and you start to notice it throughout the whole song, like it never goes away. And this is another 12-minute song, and I kind of just went one whole listen of just focusing on that the whole time through it. And as I said, towards the end of it, the drums start to mirror this industrial beat, and it kind of is a cool outro to the track. Definitely one of my highlights. The favorite song on the album, though, for me is Blood Vaults. Probably just because it's such a dynamic tempo change from the rest. It's a black metal song, basically, straight up. And it has one hell of an opening. Like what I Raise the Stone did in the beginning, where it's just like a drum drops and it goes right into the song. Same thing here. Except this is just like a head-banging, neck-breaking black metal tremolo riff. It's instantly memorable. I love how this track opens, pummeling and powerful, and then it kind of gets into this like D beat section. It's got like this, like maybe it's a thrash beat. I don't know. Like the drums are at an interesting tempo that's not heard anywhere else in the album. It's quite impressive. And then to change it up even more, at 5 minutes in, it goes into a mid-tempo Norwegian black metal kind of section, where it's just like this, like, it kind of feels like a Dark Throne kind of march, and very cool, just up tempo song whole way through. Arcane Pharmacon Messiah, great closing track. It is on the longer side, but that riff that you mentioned, Kellen, it starts at the 7-minute mark. Tempo change into like this plodding death metal section, and it carries it out perfectly for me. And I do like the keys and the synths on this song, because they feel like almost the brightest and the most hopeful, but at the same time there's something off. It's uneasy. There's like all these layers of synths in certain sections, and yeah, there's a certain uneasiness to the track, and yeah, big fan of that one for sure. And then to agree with Kellen, the interludes do not bother me. Like if you're already committed to an 80-minute long album, what's an extra 4 minutes of build up or dynamics? I think they help add. Like I know the interlude before we get to Blood Vaults, it makes that song hit that much harder when it comes in. So I think there's purpose to them.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, man. Very similar, to Logan's take. Like, the opener, I love how it just gets right into it. Like, here's what we sound like now. Even though there's a lot of like, just, atmospheric style moments and instrumentals that are kind of like, noise based or like, electronic sample based, that kind of thing. The first song just goes right into it, man. Drums, bass, guitar, riff, crazy vocals, just right into it. And, and like, this is the new Ruins of Beverast. And it really is a statement, an announcement. And it's a wonderful way to kick the album out. We go, out of that, into Gods and Sanguine, Bestiaries. That's that down-tuned black metal riffage, that I really love. That's kind of a signature now of Ruins, along, with the doom. There's haunting keys in that I really like. The keyboards in that song are really awesome. A very cool, very slow, more like a melody line, but a solo of sorts is in that song near the end. They kind of right before the doom kind of moves forward into some double bass territory. Mount Sinai Moloch has that sort of picked and bending notes style of playing that I was mentioning before. Cain's Countenance Fell. I do like that. There's a section in there where the keyboards sound majestic, but they also sound extremely somber at the same time. And I don't know how you do that. How you can make keyboards sound triumphant and like very sad. But he was able to pull that off. It's around the 4.5 minute mark. So if you haven't checked that out, I recommend it. And what's cool is like after that really cool, unique synth moment, super blasphemous vocals come after that. Like, oh, did you think you were gonna have a nice like mellow moment? Well, now I'm gonna destroy your ears with some. It's pretty sweet. Restless Mills. We've talked about that song a lot, and I do think it's one of the highlights on the record, man. The way he blends in, the industrial elements, the repeated percussion on the beginning, on the toms, then that chunk chunk, sound from that sounds like it is found within a factory. Now he brings it all together, with the drums and bells ringing and things like that. It's really cool, a very unique moment on the album, and I always kind of perk up my listening when it comes to that. Yeah, I love like the fast, powerful, hitting of blood vaults. There's a weird, small sounding kind of the synth horns thing on that. I haven't quite figured out what that is, but I like it there. But then we go to Arcane Pharmacon Messiah, dude. This is my favorite song on the record. Very slow, super doomy at first. The organs are going, but man, when that riff comes in, man, that is a god-sized riff. I love that. I mean, everything up until that moment on this record, 75 minutes, has been very esoteric and dark and twisting. But dude, when that riff comes in, the headbanging comes out, dude. I mean, the first time I heard that riff, I about like destroyed my bedroom. I just started thrashing the fuck out. It absolutely is one of my favorite riffs of all time, man. It's like, and he's like, "Oh, is that enough for you? No, how about?" He throws a fucking triplet in there, and it just. He's hitting the ride, man. Tang, 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 tang. And you're like, God. Man, if a fraction of metal was as cool as that one riff, man, I'd be an even happier person today. But that right there is exactly what heavy metal's all about. And it was so worth the 75-minute wait. It is absolutely stunning. Killer riff. It's down tuned, it's dark, it's heavy, it's chunky, it's got killer drum beat behind it, it's got everything that makes good metal. And then it gets all dark and weird again with like anti-melodies and stuff fading it out, back to the doom, and and there you've got your end. And and so you just a wonderful journey, this whole record. And that song fully encompasses for me what Ruins is all about, and what this album's all about, and what my experience of them as a band is all about. So, yeah, man, that song, even the title Arcane Pharmacon Messiah. I mean, it's just everything about it is great, dude. I mean, I've actually like, when I first got this, I would go and I'd like take the needle back and I'd start that song over again. I'd pick it up and I'd start it back over again. Mm-hmm. You're onto something special when that happens. So yeah, those are my favorites. And yeah, there is no bad song on this record. And yeah, even the little interludes I think are essential. Everything about this record is essential. I wouldn't take anything out.
Yeah, as we talked about, I really like the leadoff track. I Raise the Stone as a ghastly memorial. I mean, it's everything you're going to get on this album. Dreary vibes, check. Excellent bass melody lines, check. Doom-like focus and plod, check. Black metal style vocals from another dimension, check. The chanting of the priests, yep. And it's really well, everything is really layered in and put in the perfect place. My favorite track on the album is Gods and Sanguine Bestiaries. It's a blasting track. It kind of puts me back in mind of Naglfar in spirit. And, it's kind of a callback to the first two Ruins albums for sure. I love there's like this melodic bass lead around the 4-minute mark when the blasting kind of subsides a bit. There's like this bass lead that comes in. It's so good. Then the blasting starts up again, and he puts in these like cheesy little orchestral stabs, like din 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 din, and it's like they're just such cheap and cheesy, but it works so good where he put them. It's like right on. I didn't think hurt the first time. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. That every band has used that, from Celtic Frost to whatever, and it's just like there it is, and he stuck with it and it worked. So kudos for that. Least favorite song on the album is Mount Sinai and Moloch, and this is one I had to exercise extreme patience. There's like a doomy midsection, plods along at a lethargic pace. It's a simplistic double bass beat, minimalistic movement in the riffs and dark harmonies. This one in particular, the chanting is a bit pompous. It's a bit over the top. The line of phrasing didn't work for me on that one, and it continues into Kane's I can't read my own writing. Whatever. Track 5. Yeah. That one. I can't remember his scribbles. I mean, it still feels like we're lost at sea here on still water with no wind in our sails. Until the blast beats hit and the more urgent tremolo riff, and it briefly stirs up a bit of a storm. And but then he returns to the slower doom as if to negate any of the energy he mustered leading up to it. Both of these tracks are good. There's just too much space of sameness when you know what he's capable of adding. And I found myself not hating the tracks, but just wanting a bit more, which he eventually gets completely right on the Blood Vaults album. Restless Mills, I really like this track. Again, at its core, pretty simplistic, but you got that industrial element entering with a synthetic drum loop in the background. There's a really tasty tremolo melody line played on the bass. I'm assuming the bass. And he also adds these very cool tubular bells in the mix as well that, God, just didn't need to be there, but he put it there and it works so good,
Right. I agree, man.
Yeah. The melody line, it adds like this slithering aura to enchant the simplistic plot of percussion. It's just this is where he's filling in some of the gaps with these really cool ideas. And that's what I find at multiple listens. I wish these other tracks had that, It's a rhythmically simplistic track, but I like the mixture and overall feel of it. Blood Vaults is another good one. You guys have talked about that a lot. I was pretty conflicted with Arcane Pharmacon Messiah. I mean, we're ending on a very layered and emotionally draining din of doom, which it's working really well here. There's a little bit of synth added and some distant waves of melody, some more simplistic drumming. And then at the 5-minute, 30-second mark, holy shit, there's like this ethereal union, man. It's like, I think Logan mentioned it. There's like this triumphant melody line on the guitar. And there's like this empowering synth texture that locks up perfectly with it. It's not really, it's more of a synth, just like a notes being held, or with like, there's like a ring to it. It's just the way they unite. It's just like this uplifting moment. It's kind of what I was waiting for and yearned for all the tracks leading up to this. And they're getting into it. I'm like, this is the payoff for the album for me. This is the crescendo. It's like this emotional peak on the album. And then he rips it away with that, the riff that Jim likes. I agree. Killer riff. But I'm like, what the hell is it doing what the hell is it doing in this part of the song? I mean, You totally
Making it better.
No, it's not. It's taking you away from this amazing atmospheric triumphant moment.
Reminding you that this is a metal album. That's what it's doing.
Is it, Celtic Frost did this 2 decades ago, but anyway.
Yeah, that's why somebody else needs to do it, man.
I think it's a cool ass riff. It's an odd choice on an oddly structured closer, but it has some very fantastic moments. So little conflicted at the end. There's a little bit of a bait and switch here for me, but overall my complaints feel minor because I don't hate any of these. I can listen to this album tomorrow and still be psyched listening to it. So other than my seemingly detrimental, I mean, it seems like I've got a lot of bitches here, but it's really, really good. And I'm not, just things that bug me a bit here and there. Judgment, final thoughts. We'll start with Jim.
Oh, start with me. Oh,
yeah, I'm mixing it up.
Man.
I'm mixing it up.
All right. Never know what's going to happen on Album Club, guys.
I looked into your eyes and said, "Oh, his eyes are telling me yes." So here he goes.
Didn't know they spoke. Well, obviously I picked it. And made no secret if you watch the show, that Ruins is one of my favorite bands. This album absolutely doesn't let me down at all. I still return to it. Every year, I listen to it, at least a few times, which, given the size of all of our collections, listen to anything more than once in a year is saying something, but it's definitely the case with this. And, so, I'd recommend, anyone that just wants to, drift away into darkness, this is your album. This is one that's going to take you there. Across the drawbridge and down the stairs. But yeah, with my thing, would buy, wouldn't buy, or would buy if it was cheap. I absolutely, of course, would buy it. I did buy it, and and I will assign a number to this because I have to express my love in that way for this record. It's absolutely a 10 out of 10 for me. I love Ruins of Beverast, and this and Blood Vaults. The album Blood Vaults, definitely especially. So that's it.
All right. Logan.
Yeah, I was blown away by this album this week. I was expecting a very abstract and dense listen, and I got that. But somehow it was engaging from the minute it opens till the very end. The 80 minutes. It felt like an hour. It was still like an hour-long listen, but at the same time, I was engaged the whole way. I was on this journey. I do like albums that can take you places and really capture you in a world and transport you to that world. Semen be damned. And Ruins does that for sure on this album, and it's not something that I would want to revisit over and over again, but one of those listens where every time I spin it, it will leave an impression. And I think that, is worthwhile in your collection just as much as a 30-minute long album that you can play, nonstop. So I was absolutely impressed. This was an emotional journey. It left me with this feeling of unease and there's a lot of anger in here too, or like a kind of a scathing.
You can feel it, yeah, which is cool.
Yeah. So to me, it was an emotionally impactful album too. So I left with that as well, and it could potentially be my favorite Ruins of Beverast that I've heard so far. I still have to really get into the first two, but of the four that I've now heard, it's either this one or Exuvia for my favorite. And I mean, I've only spent a week with this one, and Exuvia I've had since 2017 or whenever that came out. So yeah, this was an impressive listen, an immersive listen, probably right around a 9.2 out of 10 for me right now. I'll try to track it down soon. 9.2.
What about 9.254? Would that be a little more dialed in?
No, that's not. That's a different. That might be Exuvia.
Nice.
All right.
Don't put words in my mouth, Marty.
Kellen.
Yeah, I always go back and forth between this and Blood Vaults in terms of my favorite within the catalog. So I'm kind of with Jim there. I can understand Marty's point about that potentially being a better sort of realization, or to sort of some kind of evolution from this project. But this is the one that like grabbed a hold of me and said, this, like, a record for posterity, right? Like one that out of all the stuff that, you know, whether you pull it off the shelf, how often you do, this is something that I would feel like down the road, decades, another generation should be able to enjoy. And there's not, like, I think in the 21st century, how many bands you can say that about, or how many records you can say that about. It may be difficult to sort of recommend on the same sort of level as the generations that had preceded them. I think Blood Vaults and Sheltered Elite, though, are two records that should sort of stand the test of time. And I would highly recommend people check them out. And this is a great place to start. If you want like a darker, nastier, more sort of obscured sound, you go to the first two records. I think Logan brought up Exuvia and, had Grimmore there when we opened this up. Those are definitely sort of like building upon this foundation in terms of experimenting in new directions. So this is a great place to start if you're new to the band.
Agreed there. I mean, it's the transitional album. And for a transitional album, it's very impressive. I mean, yeah, Alexander he has moved the ball down the field where a lot of other bands have taken a knee and are just completely fine with, reanimating Dark Throne or Burzum or whatever. I mean, this is a band that has advanced the genre by way of multiple genres and multiple different styles and sounds, and he's done so with a lot of class and know-how, and it's cool to hear it, even though there's some things here and there that bug me about this record. It's a great record. It's an 8 out of 10 record for me, and he really gets it right on the neck. He sticks the landing. I mean, this is a great album. The next album is even better. It's just more of everything. It's just more layered and more nightmarish and twisted, but all the while, like I mentioned earlier, he does so he brings you into it to interact with that madness, as opposed to, this is too crazy for you, so stay the hell away, and he does so by not just bashing you over the head with waves of noise or out of key riffs. There's a lot of melody here. There's a lot of melody and emotion spinning throughout these songs, and it's very evident here. He's really getting a grasp of what he wants the band to be, and Foulest Semen is it's an 8 out of 10 for me, for sure. Great pick, Jim. It was a total drag. It wasn't on Spotify or YouTube Music. I didn't even realize it was on Bandcamp until today. So I've been trying to deal with having to sit in front of a CD player with this thing. I'm like, why isn't it on Spotify? What the hell is going on? But yep, it's on Bandcamp. So you want to check it out, link in the description to go check out the Bandcamp page and all their other stuff as well. So if this is the first time you've ever heard of this band, this is a good time to go break bread over at Bandcamp and check it out. So yeah, Kellen, you missed last week because you were,
I did. I was
Mutual of Omaha's Wild
attack.
Kingdom. Yeah.
Okay. So for this one, we're going off to Italy. A little bit change of pace here. This is the debut record from Dark Quarter.
Oh, this album rules.
So for
So
anyone,
good.
Anyway, that'll maybe unfamiliar with it. A little bit different than Ruins. Going back, I think 1987 here, but
Italian epic metal.
Epic heavy metal and kind of weird.
Underground, weird.
Yeah.
Well written and killer, though. Very good album.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone enjoys.
Yeah, cool. Anybody have anything they want to throw out there before we break like the wind?
So, I mean, hopefully this weekend I will get something recorded, and then I'll probably go through a little bit of an editing, but I'm sure as soon as that gets finished up, I'll let Album Club folk know, and then I'll also put it up on the Discord.
Everybody, if you're not on the Discord server, we have a very cool community there. Go check it out. Links in the description. It should be updated and ready to go. Jump on there, and all the people in the chat, or a lot of people in the chat, are in there talking all day long. So, Logan, how about you?
Hopefully I'll be seeing you on Friday.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Jim?
Nothing for me, man.
Right on. Well, some show notes here. Like we mentioned, tomorrow night there's a second album club for the week where it'll be Mike Seatown, Jimmy from Future Ruins, myself, and Alan. We're going to be doing a album club format on the new Halloween album, Giants and Monsters. So tune in for that. And Friday night, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing a bit of an Ozzy memorial. Okay, let me see if I can remember who's going to be on. S. Craig Zoller, Sue Varick as Lazarus, Logan, Rick. Going to be a bunch of us sitting around talking about our favorite Ozzy / Sabbath songs. It's going to be kind of an open thing. That's kind of the goal, but if depending on how long it goes, we might talk about favorite albums. We'll see. We'll just stories. I think Sue went to the concert, so it'd be cool to get her perspective on how that all went down and all that good stuff. So should be a fun time. Sad, but got to celebrate a lifelong music creator. And hey, we probably wouldn't be here talking about this shit if it wasn't for them. Sabbath was our Beatles. Sabbath is our Beatles. You guys can have the other Beatles. I don't want that Beatles. We'll take the Sabbath. But all right, everybody, thanks a bunch. There you go. I've asked him that as well.
Nope, I'm good, man. This is the extent of my YouTube universe. But I appreciate the support, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. See you in the Discord server, and see you tomorrow night. Have a good one.